Welcome to Backstories, the podcast where we dig deep into the untold tales behind the people, places, and moments that shape our world. Every month, we'll uncover the hidden narratives that inspire, surprise, and challenge us. So, grab your headphones and get ready to journey into the past, one backstory at a time.
All right, another first-time storyteller. Tony. Story is January 22nd. Taylor has bravely stepped up, and Taylor's story is called Something About Stools.
6'3", also married. So I've chosen to interpret today's prompt as less so a weird story that happened to me, but the funny stories that happened around me. So when I think of stories that come unprompted, I really think of a space. And in that space, I think they need a few key items. And I think the first one of them is, in fact, a stool. I think there's something magical about a stool. So when you sit on a stool, you got no back support, so you're really prompted to sort of lean forward. And when you have those good stories, you want to be leaning forward into them because that shows your interest. I think you also need a countertop. And so something that you can lean across, lean on, support yourself, lean in for those whispers or for those tawdry details that need to be said at a closer range. I also think you need someone behind that counter that's paid to be there and kind of has to listen to you no matter what. And so what I think I'm really describing here, and I wouldn't be surprised if most people think about this, is like a bar. And obviously we have something that resembles that quite a bit over there. But that's not what I'm thinking about. Because I think also in a bar you have alcohol, which is a really good way to get people to tell you stories unprompted. So let's put a pin in that for just a second. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I was really fortunate to grow up in a small town in Maine called Bar Harbor. Folks may be familiar with it. We're home to a national park, but I truly grew up there. So what folks know are hotels, the park, overpriced lobster rolls. I don't really think they're overpriced. If you ever try to handpick enough lobster meat for a lobster roll, you understand why it costs that much. But because I lived there, I got to see the dirty underbelly of all of it. And a really good way to do that is have parents who have an auto parts store. And my parents had an auto parts store, kind of tucked away, really poor signage, just really in a terrible location, which meant we really were only helping out the folks who lived there all year. And beyond just auto parts, they also did boat parts and whatnot. So we had the mechanics in town, we had the fishermen, and they would come en masse and they'd be our regulars. And so let's go back to that pin. My parents set up their auto parts store, not unlike a bar. So there was, if you've ever been into one in your lives, you've probably familiar. There's usually a countertop and people standing on one side because they can run, grab parts, and come back out. But my parents had this. They had two stools that sat out in front, and I truly believe there's something powerful about a stool because the kinds of stories that our regulars would come in and share are not the kind of stories you would expect at a place of business. I learned about, and I started working at our store younger than I think is probably legally allowed, but it's a family store. It was my mom, my dad, one other person. That person shifted a lot, and then it would be me. And so people would come in, they know my parents, they tell terrible stories about whatever is going on in your life. So a lot of gossip, a lot of sexual escapades, with photographic evidence, which was never particularly enjoyed. A decent number of crimes were talked about, and just about every little tawdry detail or bit of gossip that everyone was talking about everyone else. And truly insane things. I was far too young to learn about most of this, but these people ended up, because of just the way that I would sit and listen, because these are obviously not my stories, but the stories of the people around us, people would become sort of almost mythical creatures in my mind, because I didn't talk to them. I was too quiet, too shy. But there would be people who were larger than life, 90-year-old people falling out of trees, blowing up their cars, and just crazy things. But there was this one guy who I knew more through stories than ever interacting with him. Salt of the earth guy, knew engines better than basically anybody else. Probably couldn't read, but was incredibly nice, incredibly skilled at what he did. And I found out at some point that about his dating life. He met this woman who came from a well-to-do family, and they really hit it off. She opened his eyes to a whole bunch of things, including something to do in the bedroom, because we found out that he was really familiar with the smell of burning, I think, nylon, because his pink bunny suit got too close to the wood stove and he caught fire, and that became just something he wanted everyone to know about. So that was terrific. But the same guy, many years prior to this, and those years are important, there needs to be a gap, he had an ex, as many of us do, who moved on in her life and found a new person, as many of our exes do. And I guess he found out that the new guy wasn't all that he was cracked up to be. I think there was domestic abuse involved. And his choice to deal with this, because of course he was an upstanding individual, he wasn't going to allow something so terrible to continue to happen, hopped into his bulldozer, and drove to this man's house and continued to drive until his house was in the ocean. So I think it's a bit of an overreaction, and it slightly, I mean, I understand you want to make your community a better place. However, you usually want to check to see if the person is in the house first. But to him, I think that was a bit of a two birds with one stone. Fortunately, the individual wasn't in that house. But so this man always lives in my heart as the guy who pushed a house into the ocean. I think he did his stint in prison, came back, has this wonderful relationship with bunny costumes. But that's what that is. So, and this is I no longer live in Maine. I live in Maryland. I truly miss it, and I miss the characters that I was surrounded by all the time. But it's really sad to me because my hometown has changed so much. My parents' store was one of these last vestiges of a place that was really catered towards the locals, and when they started to start their slow descent into going out of business, the entire community came out in an outpouring, and they thought of this place as this like watering hole, this kind of almost like bar-like experience where people would come and they told those additional stories, and we're sad to see us go. And the store is long gone now, but I'm just happy to still have the stories. Thank you.
Wow.